Our episode commences with the prince being consulted by his counselors, inquiring about his plans regarding Princess Eliza. He responds that she will be held responsible for her treachery as she endeavored to assassinate him. The narrative then transitions to the territory of Bastia, situated in the nation's western region and loyal to the prince. Thus, this area is the domain of the first prince and heir apparent, a formidable commander who has suppressed 3 insurrections, vanquished numerous kingdoms, and garnered the appellation King of Wars. The action progresses as Nina arrives, only to be notified by an administrator that Prince Set is unavailable today. Exasperated after lingering for over 4 hours, Nina conveys her displeasure, but Hikami advises her that expressing rage won't be beneficial. Atoning for her outburst, Nina discovers that Hikami is the sole individual who escorted her from the royal residence, while the remaining ladies hail from the metropolis of Galgada. She inquires when she will encounter the prince, but they disregard her, informing her instead that her nuptials will occur in 6 months. She is at liberty to act as she desires until then and is permitted to peruse the fortress unhindered. Alyssa then emerges and meanders about the estate until she attains the open air. She contemplates the prince, envisioning him as brawny and robust, with flaxen hair and crimson eyes. At that juncture, a bird named Nina assaults her, mistaking her for an intruder within the grounds. Prince Set summons the avian creature, stating, "Nina, come here." Alyssa pivots and answers, "Yes, what do you desire?" Because her true appellation is Nina, as she observes him, she ponders if he is genuinely Prince Set, noting his scarlet eyes, and he gazes at her, astonished by her unusually deep azure eyes. He remarks, "I am aware you possess the liberty to roam the castle grounds, but I never anticipated discovering you here." It appears inquisitiveness has captivated the sister, Princess of Fortina. Though she experiences ire, Alyssa restrains herself at the final instant as she wishes to make a favorable impression. She curtsies and states, "It is a privilege to meet you, Princess. My name is Alyssa Fortina." He inquires if Nina was her appellation during childhood, as she turned when he uttered it earlier, and she acknowledges it was. He then informs her that his bird's name is also Nina, and both share the characteristic of cerulean eyes. Observing a minor abrasion on her brow, he informs her, "We'll conduct the welcoming function tomorrow, so you can repose a while. Feel free to survey the castle as you please." Later that evening, Alyssa ventures outside to admire the exquisite, star-studded indigo sky. It has been more than a fortnight since she departed her native land, yet she still feels disheartened and yearns for azure profoundly. Nevertheless, she reminds herself that she's undertaking this to safeguard azure and the remainder of Fortina. During supper, she asks, "Who are you?" Prince Set presents her to Clamina and Mia, 2 princesses from affiliated nations, stating, "You are all prospective brides, chosen by the king of Galagada. Endeavor to be harmonious with each other." She begins to weep, imploring, "Return us to our homeland. We do not wish to defy Galgada." Seth inquires how she dares to be so disrespectful at such a celebratory occasion, accusing her of dishonoring Fortina's name. She apologizes to Alicia and Seth. Infuriated by the circumstances, he resolves to depart, declaring he has no intention of marrying any of them. Alicia, resolute, decides to pursue him. One of the other maidens cautions her that Set terminated Princess Eliza and regards them as mere instruments to govern the region. She implores Alicia to flee instantly. However, Alicia feels compassion for them, and as she departs, she contemplates, "My sole aspiration is to become queen and safeguard Azure's life." Alicia then approaches Prince Set, informing him she would be privileged to become his queen, regardless of the consequences. They enter a chamber together where Set attempts to force himself upon her, but she resists, which prompts him to label her naive. He informs her that there was once a princess named Eliza who tolerated his cruel treatment for a period until she brandished a dagger against him. That deed finally permitted him to address her family, who were on the brink of instigating a revolt. Alicia recollects a dialogue with the aged monarch, where he forewarned her that Galgada was seeking a pretext to invade Fortina, despite the amicable relations between their territories. She muses, "I presume this encounter with the prince was the king's notion, a method to bring him closer to his prospective spouse. If I can establish a rapport with him, perhaps he would abandon his intentions." But she's interrupted by Set, who questions her, asking if she'll perish defying him or perish in anguish. She comprehends that he has no intention of treating her as a bride, dismissing her. He commands her to return to her chamber and weep. Back in her quarters, Alicia declines the nourishment brought by her servant, asserting that she'll dine when she's famished. She breaks down, reflecting, "I cannot jeopardize my life like this for Azure's sake. My comprehension was shallow and naive. I am a fool with no genuine authority, and there's likely nothing I can do to alter that. As she drifts to sleep, Nina envisions Azure and finds herself transported back to her homeland. Fortina. Azure, observing her alarmed expression, inquires what troubles her. Astonished to see herself in Galgada, she commences to weep, recounting the dreadful dream where she felt vulnerable and impotent. Azure sternly informs her that he doesn't want to hear justifications and that today, she must study the one discipline she dislikes most, decorum. Annoyed by his pronouncements, Nina suppresses her frustration because of her affection for him. She informs him that she's endured numerous difficulties up to this juncture and that it's only natural for her to experience despair and frustration. Azure responds by reminding her that despite everything, she consistently displays a smile. She replies, stating that her minor joys and utmost happiness still exist to help her remember Azure. Then he encourages her to venture out and seek something beneficial to do. Nina awakened to discover sustenance on the table and continued dining, her thoughts drifting to contemplations of whether she'd face demise by challenging Set or by grief. Whatever the consequence, she resolved to maintain a cheerful countenance. She emerged from her room, feeling unusually jovial, and commenced conversing with every servant she encountered in the fortress. The staff were all astonished by her lightheartedness, particularly after encountering Prince Set. Eventually, she reached Prince Set's chamber and requested the sentinels to grant her entry. One of them informed her that Set was occupied and couldn't receive her. When she peered inside, she observed him relaxing, and the guard clarified that his leisure time was exceptionally crucial to him. Undeterred, Nina elevated her voice, insisting she hadn't defied him and that she wouldn't weep or react as he anticipated. She audaciously declared that she would become essential to him as his queen. Hearing her, Seth derisively labeled her foolish and informed her that nothing in this realm was genuinely necessary. He added that he would converse with her once he was finished with his present undertaking and instructed the guards to escort her out. Once outside, Nina felt a coldness from the way Set's gaze alone could dismantle her, but she resolved to persevere, realizing that he desired her submission. As she wandered outside the castle walls, she inadvertently collided with a maiden named Anne. Nina swiftly apologized, explaining she hadn't observed her previously. When Nina addressed her as Colleen, and was perplexed, Nina clarified that Colleen was a lad she'd once known who was like kin to her, though he was quite comely despite being male, and inquired if Nina was truly the princess who had arrived 3 days prior and questioned why she would confide in her so readily. In response, Nina humbly admitted she was like an insignificant creature here and desperately yearned to become Anne's companion, entreating for her amity, and consented, stating, "If it'll bring you happiness, then yes." Nina radiated with joy and embraced her, calling in her first friend. Nina then excitedly informed the maid that her new companion would instruct her in the particulars of her duties. Later, she inquired of Hikami about a diadem she had seen, seeking her viewpoint. Hikami proposed that perhaps it was preferable to present something unostentatious. Nina concurred, stating that and could always vend it if she required funds. Hikami then added that Nina should aspire to exasperate the Prince of Galgada. The narrative shifts to Colleen, who is surprised by Nina's present. "I possess nothing to offer you in return," Colleen says to Nina. Nina reassures her, stating, "I'm content. You've educated me extensively about the fortress's secrets, and I'm delighted that individuals here converse with me without directives." Colleen replies, "I haven't heard of any regulation prohibiting us from speaking to princesses." This causes Nina to ponder why people treated her differently the preceding day. Perhaps they dislike foreign princesses. If they weren't instructed to speak with her, she contemplates that maybe she can undertake something to alter that. Colleen expresses gratitude again, and Nina notes to herself that witnessing Colleen so content is a positive thing. The scene transitions to Nina in her chamber, cheerful and determined, stating, "I'll exert my utmost today. I'll go greet everyone, but what will I do precisely?" We then observe Nina strolling about when she hears shouting. She encounters an individual conversing with Colleen, accusing her of pilfering something. "I believed it was aesthetically pleasing and that it would be discarded," Nina says. The guard angrily tells her, "Even if it's a plume, everything here belongs to Prince Set. Unawareness is not a justification, and you'll atone for this transgression with blood." At that instant, the prince appears. Nina boldly asks him, "Does even the dirt upon the ground belong to you?" He grins and replies, "Did you assume you could simply address me?" Nina replies, "I was dispatched here to wed. I'm a citizen of Galgada." Set retorts, "Then it won't be a problem if I eliminate you right now, would it?" Cammy arrives just in time, but Set strikes Nina in the abdomen with his blade. "Did you believe I was deceiving you?" he says coldly. Nina collapses, and Hikami rushes to support her. Nina, weak but composed, reassures Hikami, stating, "I'm merely a little fatigued. He won't kill me." Kami swiftly attends to Nina's injury. Nina feebly addresses Set. She tells him, "You stated you'd make me your queen. If that's truthful, then I can comprehend matters better if you permit me." She loses consciousness, and Set catches her, appearing bewildered. What ails this princess? He wonders. And that's where today's installment concludes. Remain tuned for the subsequent installment, and if you relish the video, don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell to stay abreast of all our latest content. Our episode begins with Alicia reclining in bed, weary, with Prince Seth at her side. Then Hikami appears and inquires what he's doing with the princess at such a late time, as her injury has worsened and she's developed a temperature. However, there's no reason for apprehension. The wound will only leave a mark. Prince Seth then tells her to be silent, as he didn't solicit her opinion, and adds that she's not only discourteous but also uncivil. He asks if she hasn't been instructed about royalty, but Kami apologizes and informs him that she'll replace the princess's dressings. Prince Seth asks if she's from Lindorm or Starbia. Then he gazes at Alyssa and remarks that when her eyes are closed, she resembles a small, adorable being, but that she's not a typical princess. Akame explains that the princess has been reared within the confines of the Star Palace since her youth, so she's unacquainted with how the world functions, making her somewhat impetuous. Prince Seth tells her to attend to Alicia and departs. The scene then transitions to Alicia, who awakens irritated. Hikami enters the chamber and urges her to remain calm since her wound hasn't completely mended. Alicia insists that she's well and desires to see Prince Seth immediately. Hikami informs her that the prince is absent. He's embarked on a cleansing expedition because the two other prospective brides absconded to their homelands, resulting in the demise of numerous individuals as a consequence. The scene then moves outside, wherein and informs Alicia that every princess who came here to wed Prince Seth suffered psychologically, and everyone felt sympathy for them because they couldn't endure observing their plight. The last princess even raised a blade against Prince Seth, which resulted in her passing, and cautions Alicia to be extremely vigilant, not to provoke Prince Seth.